Welcome. I see we have a couple of people already on. One person, two people. People popping on and off. Thank you for bearing with me while I figure out new technology, new to me technology. I'm going to give it just a couple minutes, and I'm going to actually push some buttons here and see if I can figure out who's here, so maybe I can tell you who's here with us. Let's see. New toys. Technology is either wonderful or obnoxious, depending on how comfortable you are using it, right? Right this moment, I'm feeling pretty good about it. Google has done an excellent job for me. Okay. Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and get started here, just since it took a couple minutes to go live, just to make sure that we're honoring everybody's time. That's one of my pet peeves, and it actually ties in nicely with one of the questions we got. So in case you don't know me, I'm Robyn Kesnow with Animal RN. I am an RVT, a registered veterinary technician, and 7 years ago, I founded a business. My intention was to be the world's most overqualified pet sitter. I say that jokingly, but I mean it. When I worked in the clinic, I worked in emergency. There was always people asking us to help them. They no longer trusted the kid up the street with their cat that's now diabetic. They'd gone through this acute incident that got them into the emergency clinic, and we were their heroes. And at the time, I'm working 40 to 50 hours for the week for the clinic. I loved my job. I'm going to school. I was pursuing a bachelor's. At the time, I hadn't yet figured out I wasn't going to go on to vet school. I didn't want to do that, was the end result with that. And then these people are asking for help, and you wanted to help them. So I knew for sure there was people that needed a service that I was able to provide. So that was the really true idea behind Animal RN, my company that we run out of Northern California, based out of Santa Rosa. Over time, and when I say over time, I mean immediately, things shifted. Literally, the first referral I had from the day, October 17th, the day that I pulled the cord from my day job and just committed to Animal RN full time, right away day one, that first referral, I didn't know it at the time. I didn't call it at the time. It was Animal Hospice. See, it was from a boarding facility. This dog has been coming to the boarding facility for either doggy daycare while mom could do some work at home, or for boarding when she was out of town. And what happened was two things, two notes. The first and most relevant issue that allowed for the introduction of me to the family with this dog, Bella was her name, I love Bella, I'll never forget Bella, was that the facility wanted the dog to be vaccinated for rabies. And at 14 years of age and kind of getting along, the owner herself had been trying to take care of herself in a different way, less chemicals, eating better, and she'd been taking care of Bella the same way, kind of tweaking the food and the routines and really trying to love on her in a way that was much more natural. So on her own, without veterinary advice, suggestion, she decided she would like to not do the rabies vaccine any longer. Therefore, I was introduced as a pet sitter who might be willing to take on a dog that didn't have a rabies vaccine. Upon meeting her, it was my great pleasure to introduce her to the idea of titer testing. So, long story short, we start off this conversation, we talk about the boarding facility, we talk to them, and it turns out that even if we had the titer testing that would help the dog get back in as far as that regulation, so to speak, the real problem was actually deeper than that. The boarding facility didn't want Bella to come back because they were worried for her safety. They were worried she was going to get herself into a dog fight with a younger dog who was flying by too fast. She's a little blind, a little deaf, and so they didn't want her there for that reason. And yet she was kind of okay. She just wasn't great in groups anymore, even though she had been her whole life. She was a little wobbly on her feet, like I said, a little blind, a little deaf, so she needed more time and attention than their staff could give. And it didn't fit well with that scenario. Based on that, we did do the titer testing just to see. Once she learned about it, she was all on board with that. In case you don't know, titer testing is fantastic. I actually started with puppies right after the puppy series so that we can see maybe we can get away with never vaccinated again. Not at the risk of the animal's health, but in general. Okay, so back to Bella. Bella's now going to have pet sitting services. She's going to use Animal RN's pet sitting services, and we're going to help her along with her older animal and become a partner in her care. And this mindset was really key. So when you're thinking about a hospice business, you know, hospice isn't a business. It is in the sense that you can get paid, you can make money, and you can do this. And the other side of it is that it's about people, and it's about animals, and it's about that connection. And I think it's important to remember that partnership kind of idea, whether you're a vet tech or a social worker or a chaplain. Okay, so Bella, her mom, we become partners, and I come in and do pet sitting. So I do it just like the facility used to, except I come to their home. So it could be doggy daycare style, where I'm just following Bella around, and Bella and I are cruising the property and eating and drinking and walking and peeing and pooping and doing what dogs do that are of that age, while mom's in another room doing her work and not having to worry about her dog falling in the beautiful fountain on the property or stumbling her way into the pool. From there, as Bella aged, there were things that we noticed that could be a little bit better. Maybe she wouldn't have noticed them if I hadn't been an RVT. But being right there and being around her, there were some things that it's like, oh yeah, she's just getting old. And the real answer is, you wouldn't let that fly with grandma. Oh yeah, grandma just hurts. No, you're going to check it out and see if it could be a simple little fix. What I didn't know is that was the beginning of animal hospice. Just to finish the story, not because it's relevant past that point, we met with their veterinarian, we chatted about it together, and basically this particular veterinarian in this case said, I got to be honest, Robyn, I've told this poor woman to euthanize her dog probably 10 times in the last 5 years. And I feel badly because obviously she's thriving and she's feeling well and she's doing great, except for these little pieces. That's when the real hospice model that I end up using at Animal RN came about. It became that I partnered with the veterinarian to kind of point out problems in comfort care. And instead of trying to fix diseases, he became a partner, and I would say what was off with the dog, and he would counteroffer, well, here's what we could do to address that, whether it was with prescriptions, whether it was she and I getting creative about changing the environment at home. I mean, the list goes on and on. It was a long journey. In fact, I have so many stories about Bella and what I learned from Bella. She is ingrained in my heart forever. I really do think that that dog comes with me when I'm running around doing animal hospice work. Fast forward a little bit, I'm on the internet, I'm looking, I'm trying to find who can help me, what are we doing, and I found the Nikki Hospice Association. So anytime we're having a conversation about animal hospice, Nikki has to come up. That hasn't been a continuing resource for me. They might change, that might evolve in the future. However, it was the catalyst, the connector that got me in the right circles that moved me forward from there. See, they hosted that same year the first ever conference on veterinary hospice and palliative care. It was over at UC Davis, and it was phenomenal. And the relationships I made there, I'm just going to tie back around to the questions I'm answering, have been absolutely pivotal in helping me have a successful business and being able to care for people and their animals in a way that they deserve. You know, I believe that people should never feel alone when they're taking care of their animals. And I think that even when you're surrounded by people that you love, sometimes you feel alone. I believe that people should be talked to like their partners. Veterinarians and nurses and chaplains and social workers and service providers like massage therapists or chiropractors, whatever it is that we're doing for this family, we almost always know more than they do. We have the experiences of 25 years of pet ownership in just a short span of time by doing our work around animals. We might have the experience of 25 years of people passing and dealing with death and dying and grief and how that fits in our world and how to cope with that and manage that depending on what we do for a living. And we get that 25 years experience in 5 years because it's our profession. And so our learning curve is higher than a standard person going through it. So on one hand, we're absolutely the experts. And this is another important point that, again, I'm going to circle back around when we're answering the questions, being the expert. And the other side of it is partnering with the people. We shouldn't be talking to people in a condescending way. How does that feel when people do it to you? And just because sometimes there's this tier that's been set up that here's where you are, discrimination based on education, discrimination based on assets, class discrimination, if you will. no matter whether it's because of education or finance. And in my world particularly, it's something I've had to overcome. And I absolutely am watching other people go through it with different professions that are coming into animal hospice, not from an RVT perspective, but the veterinarians themselves, business owners, massage practitioners, nutritionists, pet sitters. Chaplaincy is a huge one. We all have our own gifts and talents. And if we think of this as a team, it all fits. So we shouldn't be talking down to the pet parents. We should be empowering them and partnering with them. And then on top of that, being able to do that for other people. If we see ourselves, there might be a hierarchy, but if we see ourselves as above somebody else and not just coming at them with full love and acceptance, this won't work. It sounds a little foofy, it sounds a little woo-woo. I came from a background where I really appreciate data, research, science. I'm not the one that's going to do the detailed study, but I want to see it to believe it, and then I'll move forward from there. And I got to tell you, as much as I tried to fight the so-called woo-woo stuff or the softer sciences, for one, there's getting to be more and more information that validates it, and for two, you cannot hide from it, and if we're going to succeed in this, we have to be open to this. This is absolutely heart work. And if you try and hide your heart behind, I'm not going to get connected to this animal, I'm not going to get connected to this person, it's not going to work. I went from someone, oh, I'm going to cry right now just thinking about it. I went from someone who hadn't cried very often. I had to be really hurt physically to cry. I didn't know it. I thought I was pretty awesome. We all think that, right? But I was not open. And, whew, that's not supposed to happen. One of the greatest gifts this work gives me every day is reminding me to be open. I cry, yeah, not necessarily when I'm teaching, but I cry on a daily basis. And I also don't feel bad when I don't cry. You know, I come into these people's homes and we're doing in-home euthanasia sometimes. Or occasionally I've been able to be present for a natural passing. We'll get into that argument another day. And sometimes I'm just hit with emotion and I cry. And I think to block that would be a mistake, and it would negatively affect being able to serve that family and that animal. And sometimes I don't cry. And it's not that my rational brain is taking over, it's just there's no tears in that moment. And it's okay. I have changed everything in my life because of that level of openness. So right away, I'll circle back around to it, but right away, we've got to treat people with love and respect and be open, or none of this works, and that includes our vendors, our suppliers, our clients, and of course, most importantly, the animals that we're working with. Okay, I'm going to get a grip. And keep going from there. So we have that we're definitely going to help people not feel alone. We're going to partner with them and empower them rather than demean them and condescend, although we're always going to be the experts in what we're the experts in. So I have spent literally tens of thousands of dollars on personal and business development, which business development is really personal development if you haven't been down that road. I've read hours and hours and hours of crappy books to find the gems. Buffini says that. He's not kidding. Brian Buffini, realtor guy. Anyway, I've done the work because I wanted the research behind it and I wanted it to be awesome. I needed myself to be my best self. And the bottom line is we have to figure out for each person, if you're a massage therapist, we need to know what is your strength within that? Go to the hyper niche. We're going to come back around to this in more depth, but you have to know what is your space and clearly define it. And one of the best things I've done that's helped me in this arena, without you having to spend the dollars and the hours, is having a great coach and mentor and making sure that person is a high enough level above me based on where I'm trying to get to. So I don't mean above like that judgment thing that we just talked about, but above me in the sense that they're operating in the area where I want to improve, and hiring them and spending that time and that money. And you know, nobody wants to spend more money on stuff. We're probably already spending money on stuff we don't need. maybe by the end of this, answering some of these questions you can't see, but over here I have a post-it board with all of the questions that were sent in. Maybe by answering some of those, we can spend the right dollars in the right place so that we don't waste our time and energy. We can get straight to the heart of helping people and making sure we're fed. All right, so I'm going to start here. How did I come up with the questions? I know I have a couple of people on here that weren't a part of receiving the survey that I sent out. So I'm going to give you an opportunity before the end of this to show me a way to get on my list, so to speak, so that you can be somebody that gives the feedback and help drives the content, because I've had such great response and a few people that can't be here that we're going to do this again. Absolutely, this is not a one-time thing. It's been overwhelming how much people have questions, and then the ones that heard that they missed out on the question asking that they wanted it. So we're going to do it. We got this. The way I got the questions was I put out a survey. Many people, probably a person a week, reach out to me on their own without me soliciting for them and say, hey, I want to start a business like yours. How do I do that? And sometimes these people are in different professions. Sometimes they're also technicians. Sometimes they're non-licensed professionals who are interested in supporting animal hospice in their way, however that is. And I've had so many of these conversations over the years, I've really kind of honed in and figured out the best way, kind of systematizing, for one, figuring out where your space is and then going from there. So the most recent round of those calls or emails, I decided, you know what, people have the same questions over and over again. Why don't we make it easier for all of us to talk together? Why don't we figure out a way to have a conversation together? So the survey went out to the next, from the time I had that thought, the next 25 people. Actually, it was more like 30 or 40 people that I interacted with, but it ended up being about 25 people who seemed like they were serious. They weren't just talking about it, testing the waters. Their heart was bleeding to be able to help people, and they just didn't know how. And they're worried about money and how to feed themselves and where does the business come from? And forget whether or not it's a profit business. Some people are in a non-profit business and operate on a volunteer level. You still have a sale to make. Even if it's a free service, there's still a process that has to happen in order for you able to do what is in your heart and what you know people want. You know, one of the things I say, you guys are going to learn a lot about my personality if you don't already know me. One of the things I say is hospice is happening anyway. If we don't jump in and help people and help them do it well, they're doing it anyway. They don't call it that. They don't put the jargon on it. And let's be honest, half the stuff we're doing, if we're going to be technical, it's technically palliative care. So just for those that don't know, going back to the definitions, in essence, I'm going to super simplify this. I'm not going to read it off the actual definition. In essence, the difference between hospice and palliative care is a terminal diagnosis. So in theory, palliative care could start with a puppy or a kitten. And hospice comes up when the doctor gives you a prognosis that is 6 months or less. Super simplifying it, we can get into it, we can talk more in depth about that another time. For our purposes, I use the word hospice because I think it's easier. Can you imagine some of the people that we work with trying to say the word palliative care? It's a big word, and I don't mean to dumb people down, but why do we have to overcomplicate it? The jargon doesn't matter. So if you hear me say hospice, please know hospice or palliative care I'm using interchangeably because I want to talk to the humans. And I'm most of the time translating between veterinary ease, if that's a language, to pet parent. And sometimes it's amazing. I have a story actually one time. I won't share it. But the vet was right there talking to the people, and basically I had to translate. And she was a wonderful veterinarian who did amazing things. And she just didn't recognize the deer in the headlights look that was going on with their client. So I was happy to be in the room in that case. That's one of the things that I personally really enjoy about the role I have in the world, is helping people understand what the well-intentioned vet is trying to get across. I'm better with shifting how I communicate based on the person in front of me. And that is actually one of the resources on my little list over here. So taking on these phone calls, emails, 30, 40 people, these 25 people seemed like they meant business, that they were inspired to do something different. They needed help, and they were open to receiving it, and so I'm happy to share it. So that's why we're here. The questions I got questions, bear with me, I'm going to read it right off of here. I got questions multiple times, how to get the veterinarians to trust me. Multiple times, where do I get the best education around animal hospice services? Where do I get what kind of education to get? How do I combine my current practice? This came from a social worker, a chaplain, a massage therapist, a chiropractor, a veterinary clinic, a pet sitting business, a rehab facility, and an orthopedic surgeon's office, veterinary, all of these. And one even came from a dog boarding facility. So everyone is wanting to know that asked this question, quite a few people. How do I combine animal hospice with what I'm currently doing? So how do I integrate it is how I would put that. How do I handle not having a brick and mortar? And some of the questions that came as secondary to that is how do I build trust because I don't have an office space, a standalone building, an actual practice physically. That has been huge for me. If you don't know, Animal RN is purely mobile. We don't have a brick and mortar, and I have a great story from Tammy Shearer around that. Next question is more about building confidence and trust. I think that question was on almost every one of the responses. How do I build trust in the pet parents? How do I build trust in my community to get the referrals? How do I build trust with the veterinarian? How do I get people to be confident in what I can do for them? How do I communicate that what I have to offer is valuable? A lot of those are very business questions, and they're very relevant, and this is such an intimate thing, and it's so important, especially because people need us, but they don't always know what they need. So the last question that did come up a few times, and I think, to be honest, it should be right at the top of the list, is around the laws. What is the legality? Unless you are a DVM or a VMD, gotta love how they gotta be different, unless you're one of those two, you have to very seriously consider the laws. And to be honest, even the vets do in their own arena and in their own way, and we'll get into some of that probably in more detail, I think, at another time. But I definitely want to address the laws and how do you know what they are and what you do with that on a general level, because we have so many different professions, categories. I won't be able to answer all of them today, but we can at least get into enough information to get you started. Okay, so based on that, why don't we start with, taking on my list here, we'll start with where to get the best education. So one of the places that I really love getting my education is IAA-HPC. I was a founding member of that organization. I served on the board for every year until this last year, actually, and I have the maddest respect for that group. It's had a hard time jump-starting. For those of you that have been around the scenes and that know the organization, it's had a hard time jump-starting and getting started and getting out there and doing stuff. That does not reflect on the quality and intensity of the opportunities available. So there's absolutely webinars that they have, resources that they have available. I'm always going to be watching it now that I'm not on the board. I'm just another member, so to speak. I'm prepared for that to shift one day, either incredibly better or possibly worse. But I'm going to do that with everybody because I've always got to be watching out for my own back. But right now, I can tell you today, and based on the last few years, that group of people is phenomenal. In fact, I can tell you, having been on the board, some of the behind-the-scenes stuff, one of the reasons why the board fell apart, so that organization wasn't able to deliver the same amount and quality of education, was actually for a very good reason. There was a huge debate between natural death and dying and euthanasia, and where does hospice fall, what does that mean, and is this a conversation we should have? There are some people who are diametrically opposed to euthanasia. There are some people who are diametrically opposed to death by euthanasia. Euthanasia, natural death, it would be cruel to let an animal die naturally. It would be cruel not to euthanize an animal. Both of these conversations are so passionate and ingrained in people that you put a couple of these leaders on either side in the same space, of course they're going to have a hard time coming to a middle ground. And so we ended up with a standstill. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's an excellent learning curve. I feel like I'm going to give out my contact information later. If you have questions around the hospice versus natural death versus euthanasia and how that unfolds, maybe write that down right now for yourself, and later on I'll give you a way to contact me. We can go through that in depth and answer the specific questions you have, because it's a really big topic and it's not really on track with the ones that were asked today. But it's definitely important. So bottom line, IAA-HPC is one of the best places to get animal hospice related education. Some of it's going to relate to you, some of it's not, depending on what you do. One of the things around getting education I have found, so the next one besides where is the what, so I'm going to kind of link these two together here, is I have found when I started 7 years ago, there wasn't an IAA HPC yet. It didn't exist. And to be honest, it's not the end-all be-all. I need stuff that that organization isn't giving me. And that's part of why I feel like I'm here today, is because it's there, it's helpful, it's good, and I need more. And I know I needed more, so I'm hoping that I can share more with other people. And then maybe even with our mind share, we come up with better questions, higher level questions, so that we can really just get to the point of helping these people. Okay, so the what, I had to create my own curriculum. And depending on what your thing is, what your industry is, will depend on your education. So for example, I'm going to use myself as an example because it's what I have to go on. I am an RVT, California State Licensed Registered Veterinary Technician. I have a certain amount of continuing education I have to do every year. And I can choose in what area of veterinary medicine I want to get my continuing education in. So besides tripling the number of units or more that is required, because that's just, I'm a lifelong learner. I believe that we need to stay immersed in this stuff. Besides that, the other thing that I did is I came up with what are the pieces that I personally am using most often. So basically, you're getting the benefit of me being in the ground, on the floor, front lines of the battlefield, in people's homes. What information did I need and not have, and then I had to go out and get that continuing education. And I'm sure it's not going to be a surprise that number one on the list is pain management and pain recognition. There's articles about it that give you the 5 physiological signs of pain so that you can guide families in recognizing pain. And then there's more, and there's deeper. And that is probably one of the most important things I've had to learn. And I think that goes across all spectrums. Even if you're a chaplain and you have no business messing with the physiological body, you'll have a separate body that you're in charge of. Even then, I think it would be a mistake to not recognize pain, to not know what you're looking for, above and beyond the quick little article that you can find online. So Robyn Downing is a huge, huge resource for me. She has a website, Downing Institute for Pain Management. Google her. Robyn, in her case, is spelled with an I, not a Y. She's fantastic. They have videos. They have articles. If you are inclined, if you're more on the veterinary medical side, there is the IVAPM. You don't have to be a technician or a vet to be a member there, but you have to pay your dues to have access to their resources. They have the best forum and the best articles on pain management, hands down. If you decide that that particular association and being a member of that isn't the best use of your money, that's one of the things I'm happy to help people with, is analyzing that piece. And I can't tell you what to do, that's going to be your job, but at least being able to tell you what I've learned and what mistakes I've made spending money in the wrong place. If you decide that that's not where your money needs to go, there's still ways to leverage that association. So by knowing who's who, knowing who does have memberships, communicating and networking together, we can get answers that are absolutely mind-blowing. I don't want to ever down-talk anybody, but if veterinarians in general practice were seeing the conversations on that site, it will blow your mind. It is insane. I geek out on pain management stuff, sorry. It's phenomenal. So that website is huge. Robyn Downing is huge. Pain management, I think, goes across the board for anybody. So again, going to where and the what on the education. So the other thing that came up, probably the next most highest frequency, ties right into our quality of life conversation with people. And that is GI stuff. So I'm not going to go into science. I'm going to keep it super simple, but all of our health is tied to our GI tract. If our gut is not healthy, our immune system doesn't work right. If our gut is not healthy, our coat, yes, your coat as a puppy or a cat or whatever you're working with isn't going to be right. Your eyesight can go out sooner. Your heart function declines. Everything gets screwed up if the GI tract is off. And I find it interesting, I switched to humans for a minute. This last year I worked with a dietary, what's she called? She calls herself a educated nutrition is her website. What is her name? Anyway, she works around nutrition. She's not a dietitian. Oh, she's a nutritional therapist. So I worked with her this last year. I've completely changed the way I eat. I have way more energy. I feel better. I sleep better. Everything is better. None of that stuff matters to you. But what I learned from her, actually easily applies to dogs and cats. You know, they have a lot of the same hardware, so what makes us think they're not running the same software? That's absolutely a Robyn Downing quote around pain. The same, I think, can be true for nutrition. Yes, they are different beings than us. I'm seriously oversimplifying it. However, what Heidi was teaching me, this educated nutrition woman, is about how 1/3 of Americans is on some kind of antacid, whether it's over-the-counter or prescription, weekly. 1/3 of Americans in 1 week taking an antacid. Our guts are messed up. They're not right. So if we're not feeding ourselves right, the odds are the education that we're having and the lifestyle we're having is probably messing up our animals too. So I'm going to tell you a story for a second. I hope you like stories because that's how I remember stuff. It's how I relate to the world. So if you don't like stories, you're probably in the wrong place. So I had my own dog, Kawasaki. So I'd been in animal hospice and doing animal RN for years, actually, before I ever had my own dog test me on my animal hospice skills. And I was very fortunate, just to give you the ending first, Kawasaki did die at home. He had a peaceful, natural passing, and it was beautiful. And we kept track of his pain the whole time. He didn't need to be loaded up on a ton of pain meds. I might not have done it if that had been true. But it was beautiful and perfect. So the minute I figured out that this guy wasn't going to be on the planet that much longer, you know, I'm working with that acupuncturist, I'm noticing that a treatment that would help his mobility for 6 weeks, all of a sudden I needed it every 4. And to be honest, let's talk about veterinary acupuncture. That stuff's not cheap. It's invaluable for helping quality of life, and it's not inexpensive. And they don't give you a good enough discount on frequent visits, in my opinion. We've got to figure out a better way. Point. Kawasaki. Mobility challenges, the acupuncture wasn't quite working. He would have diarrhea more often. We'd resolve it, but we were using medications to kind of tweak and rebalance the system. He was on his own little doggy antacids, basically, periodically, as needed, PRN. I don't care. Getting old is not an acceptable symptom. I'm going to go check it out. I'm going to see what I can do better. So I worked with a holistic vet. She happened to have a subscription. UC Davis has this great nutrition thing that the veterinarians can subscribe to and really have, just like IVAPM, they can have the top of the line information on nutrition. I also now work with Jody Z. She is fantastic. Her website is holistichealthypets.net. And basically we cleaned up Kawasaki's diet. So we got off of premium kibble. I was feeding pretty good stuff. We got off of premium kibble, and I cooked for my dog. I never thought, I'm going to tell you this because I want you to know your client's perspective. I never thought I would cook for my dog. I was somebody, I'm embarrassed to say this, I was somebody who swore as an RVT, who worked in an emergency clinic for that many hours, who had friends that were employed by pet food companies, getting paid big bucks, by the way. That's an offer you can't refuse. Who worked before that in the clinic before I even had my license. I swore there are enough options for pet food. There's got to be one that's the right fit for your animal. There's no reason why you can't buy commercial dog food. I was wrong. I was really wrong. I really swore by that, and I was wrong. Even though the diet foods, for example, can help with disease, even though it can be a baby step to help get the animal back on track and get the people used to doing something different, I really believe those foods are a good tool for tweaking client compliance, getting them to do what you want to do. And I think the next step after getting them on a diet that's appropriate, if it's a commercial diet, is then to see if we can take them one step further into cooking for their animals. Like I said, I swore I would never do it. The reason why I did it with Kawasaki is because I thought he was dying. So I thought, I'm just going to do this for this short period of time, here to here. And I can do that. I love this dog. He's dying. He deserves it. This dog has been there for me. Oh, now I'm crying again. This dog has been there for me when my dad dropped dead at 51 unexpectedly, when nobody else would help me get out of bed, when I had my own realization. For the first 6 months, I took care of everybody. 6 months later, it hit me. That dog was who got me out of bed. He did things he wasn't allowed to do. He was a very well-behaved boy. He did things he wasn't allowed to do to get me out of bed. This dog had been with me when, when men weren't, when my relationships fell apart. This dog deserved, if I could help him by cooking, I didn't even cook for myself at the time. If I could cook for him and it would make him feel better, I was going to do it. And the people you work with, they might swear that they'll never do something. And this goes for more than just food. And when they're in that moment where you're just asking them for a little bit of time to try something, and if it would make their baby feel better between now and the day this baby is no longer with us, people will surprise you. I have so many stories around that, it's insane. People will surprise you, and I trust them now to do what's best. Okay. So the point of that, going from never feeding food that wasn't a commercial diet to cooking for my dog. I think my dog had a couple months left to live. In hindsight, now that I know the dying process into the light, a resource that we'll be talking about later, I think he probably had a couple months to live. And when we switched his food and continued his acupuncture, and we actually added in a couple other things to decrease the frequency of acupuncture so I could afford it, she taught me some acupressure points. We brought in massage, things to help control cost. Ding, 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 something to do for animal hospice people. That food, I swear, gave him 2 more years, because I had gotten a puppy thinking that I was just making sure I had no dog for a minute. What happened was Kawasaki felt so much better. He was more lively. He had more energy. He went on more walks. And to be honest, he bossed around that little puppy in a way that really wasn't fair. I probably wouldn't have gotten a puppy if I had any idea. And that's only one story, and it's my story, so it's the one I want to share. But I'll be honest, I can tell you that story in so many different households. Cats, dogs, those are my things. I don't do the other animals. And over again, it's tied to the food. And something that's difficult for the first 2 weeks becomes easy over time. So this is the kind of knowledge and experience that sounds very simple, but getting people to comply and helping them can save animals from early euthanasia. Like I said, he lived for 2 years after that and died on his own naturally. And those 2 years were not some, excuse my French, some dog dragging ass. This was absolutely living life. Okay, so that led to, let me learn about the GI tract. How do I manage diarrhea in the most complicated of cases? How do I manage vomiting in the most complicated of cases? What veterinarians can be my resources that I go to? What about veterinary oncology? Because that chemotherapy and that radiation, they say it's not going to have the same effect on our cats and dogs as it does on people. And I can tell you from experience that's not always true. So by managing the GI tract and getting education around that, it became huge for me. Next big kind of area besides pain and then the GI tract became mobility stuff. I have learned more about animal rehab and physical therapy than I ever needed to know. I could probably get my own CCRP right now. That's not true. But I've learned quite a bit, and I don't actually do rehab. I do if a veterinarian pulls us in, shows us how to do it, and asks us to support the family, but only under veterinary supervision. But the tips and tricks and tools that rehab therapists use are huge and invaluable in little old bodies. See, they have the same instabilities. The difference is they're not going to recover. So by using the tools to strengthen, stabilize their muscles, keep their balance upright, exercise in a way that doesn't have impact, all of these little things actually added up to being really helpful. The other thing I really learned that is invaluable from the rehab kind of community, so to speak, there's a woman, Debbie Saunders, has Wizard of Paws. Best, what does she call it? I don't know if she calls it a newsletter. I'm going to call it a newsletter. It's basically a magazine she puts out periodically. Best subscription I've ever gotten if you're working around the physical side of things. Absolutely helped. And it taught me how to get creative. You know, you want to elevate the food bowl, but not too much, so you got to have the right education with certain animals. But you've got a little old lady who's on a fixed income. She can barely pay for you to show up, or maybe you're there on a volunteer basis. She can't afford to be buying a new gimmick that may or may not work. So teaching how to get creative, again, that's one of those things where experience is huge, and we can absolutely unfold on that in a lot of ways and kind of shortcut the learning curve for other people. I mean, might as well benefit from what I've been running around doing, and some of the people I've been working with, I'm already in anticipation of the questions that are asked here and seeing the depth that we could really go to. That, I mean, an hour and a half is a long time, but I've already talked to some people about, would you be willing to come on and play and share what you've learned? And so far, everybody has said yes. So we absolutely can go into some details on this stuff if you have specific questions. Okay, so let's pick a different topic now. So far we've addressed a little bit about what and where to get the education stuff. Next question: how do I combine this with my current practice? And this is across many industries, so to speak. I think that question might have to be more of a one-on-one question. So for me, I know having a mentor, having a coach has been huge. I didn't have another RVT to go follow. I know there's some techs doing what I'm doing now, but they weren't when I first started, and I certainly didn't know them when they started up. So we didn't have this benefit of being able to form a community, get to know each other, kind of figure out a way to mind share together, which is absolutely the way I'd like to see things change for us, is being able to mind share with people who are operating at the same level or at a level that we want to be. So how do I integrate it into what I'm already doing? So for example, for me, I had a pet sitting business. Yeah, I have my RVT license, and that's over here, and that allows me to do some things in the medical arena, but I had a pet sitting business. So how do you incorporate animal hospice? That's going to be a different answer than someone who has a chaplaincy practice, someone who has a massage practice. What I'm going to skip forward and say, because like I said, that's a very specific thing, and I think that's a one-on-one coaching will bring it full around and absolutely have the opportunity to go in depth on that, is the brick and mortar question. I don't have brick and mortar. You don't need brick and mortar. I've been operating animal RN since 2007. I don't have a building. There's no reason to have a building. The reason to have a building is if you have retail for people to come and buy. And to be honest, with the web options and the ability to drop ship from a vendor, we don't even have to do that. I will be the first one to tell you, this is one of the things that I would like for people who have this question to really hear me on this, because it was a struggle for me. I wanted a brick and mortar building. Even as recently as a year ago, I reconsidered, should I have a building? And every time I analyze it and do the math, for one thing, the rate I would have to charge people, the amount of money I'd have to have coming in if I was a nonprofit even, in order to afford that building, just the building, the lights, the internet, the phone, all the costs associated with it, not even counting someone being there to open the door, is incredibly high, to the point where it makes the service inaccessible. And I want to tell you about Tammy Shearer. It's her story, so you're welcome to check her out and tell it, but she shared it publicly, so I'm going to steal it and share it with you. Tammy's story. So Tammy Shearer is a veterinarian. She's moved around a bit. She's now in the southeast part of the world, I think, unless she's moved again. Point is, she started the world's first standalone brick-and-mortar animal hospice. She eventually had a rehab facility on one half of the building where she did physical therapy, and then she had the hospice on the other side. And what happened was she ended up going to people's homes, because when animals get to a certain point, it doesn't make sense for them to come in. The stress does not outweigh any benefit that we could give them. So it is by nature, it happens at home. And this is probably a hot topic for people who do human hospice work. You know, there's the skilled nursing facilities and facilities that aren't skilled that have, services. And then there's staying at home. And at some point, if you're going to stay at home, if your body doesn't do what it's supposed to do and just go when it's done, there's some quality of life issues or some things that needs to be managed, we have to either bring in help or bring the person to the help. And because we don't have a local, state, and federal system that picks up that bill, if we can't, we don't have the same insurance programs. Yes, we have pet insurance. Yes, it can cover some of this stuff. That can be another topic one day if you like. Nobody asked that question. But hospice happens at home. If we had a different system, it might be more reasonable to have a location. I have watched quite a few people start up what they expect to be a boarding facility where people can bring in, say, doggy daycare for their senior dogs, where they can't be alone all day. So services like what I provide, except instead of coming to the home in the middle of the day while they're having a long day at work, they're going to come to this doggy daycare place. But the point of this doggy daycare isn't socializing with others. It's really an infirmary, a nursery, is that the right word? I don't know. Daycare for seniors, geriatric support. And I watched them fail over and over again. I have watched people spend literally $100,000, one woman, $100,000 in startup alone, not counting that she was operating at a negative every month. I don't know how much money she lost, but I know that it was tens of thousands per month. That's a lot of money. She got investors. She used her savings. She used her husband's retirement. They leveraged everything to do this. And they could do it, and they actually did a great job. The problem was, by the time they had literally just a couple of animals, they couldn't take any more without it looking like a veterinary clinic. And so if you're going to then operate a veterinary clinic, how is it not different than boarding at the vet clinic, which is going to be cheaper because it doesn't have the same overhead. So going back to Tammy Shearer, she's got the hospice, she's got the physical therapy, they're side by side. She's finding herself go out to people's homes. And the other thing that she noticed, the physical therapy part was being used, the rehab was being utilized. The hospice side turned into an education center, which is great, but doesn't necessarily need a brick and mortar building. You can rent a conference room for, they call it virtual office space, where you can rent a conference room, even in an expensive area, for sometimes as little as $250 a month. And if that sounds expensive, that's much less than a brick and mortar that you're renting or owning on a regular basis. So I really want to hit home that you don't have to have a physical space. How many veterinarians have mobile practices? It's a huge operation, and it's actually increasing. It's on the rise, how many mobile veterinary practices, how many house call veterinarian practices we have. Even human doctors, we're having more the concierge veterinary, or concierge medical care for humans. We're noticing that the trend is on the rise. I think there's a TV show about that. Is that still on the air? So please, please, please hear me that you do not need a building to feel credible. I want a building. I'll tell you why I want a building. I have this vision of this place that has indoor swimming for dogs, that sometimes shuts down and it's cats only, that has the underwater treadmill, that has the outside the water regular treadmill, that has those peanut balls blown up and fans on the walls and tools neatly organized, beautifully and brightly painted. And there's always somebody around, whether it's because we're being calm and we're being quiet, or whether it's because we're enthused and we're getting excited and we have healthy animals and wellness stuff going on. It would have a conference room type space where people could have meetings and conversations and learn. It would have a classroom type space where the community and pet parents could come in, where you could clear those chairs away and bring in the animals and let a dog trainer utilize that space. It would have curtains segmenting areas of the room and maybe even some physical barriers and some special leashes and harnesses so these animals don't get hurt with the unknowing pet parents that might be dragging them around. And we can bring in a veterinary acupuncturist who could do a clinic type setting where it's really a community co-op type experience. So the cost goes down for everyone and more people have access to this. It would have giant freezers and refrigerators where local caterers who choose to make food for people who maybe are willing to afford that expense can use recipes from Jody Z and provide this for the local community. And I see this in so many different places. So I get it that you want a facility. And there's so much more that I could keep going on about. I get it. You don't need a facility. You can have credibility. It all matters how you show up. So from that, I'm going to actually skip over and a little bit back to education. There is one resource. I talked about it a couple years ago at the IAA HPC conference, International Association for Animal Hospice and Palliative Care. At this conference, I talked about one of my favorite resources, and I don't mean favorite like, ooh, I like it, it's fun. I mean favorite like, I use this every day. And it's going to sound like it's on the woo-woo side, or it's indirect, or it doesn't need to be a priority. This is huge. It ties into the vet trust thing. It ties into the building confidence. It ties into where the people come from that you work with, vendors, suppliers, clients, all of it. It's going to sound unrelated. Sorry, that's why I'm laughing. So there's this book. It's written by a woman called named Dawn Lyons. It's co-authored by Tony Alessandra and Ivan Meisner. And the book is called Room Full of Referrals. Now, the book is intended to be a business referral book. There are other books written around, let me go backwards. It essentially is the DISC assessment, D-I-S-C. I'll let you look that up on your own, or we can circle back around in more of a one-on-one setting if you want. So there's tons of those. How is this one different? Why this and not one of the 8 million other resources? Tony Alessandro is like the mogul in this area. Why not one of his books? Why this book? I'll tell you why. Because it takes a complicated subject and it breaks it down in a way that's easy to understand and immediately actionable. The other thing it does is it doesn't focus on me. It focuses on the people I'm interacting with. So even though this book was intended to talk about how to get referrals, how to interact with the people you want to refer, get referrals from, that kind of thing, that kind of relationship, if you can look past that for a minute, because most of the content is about interacting with people. Doesn't matter whether or not you're going to get business from them because it's a veterinarian who's going to refer you, or whether it's a family member that you're working with and you want to help them on their journey. Even if there's no charge, again saying those are your clients, those are your people. So this room full of referral books, I'll tell you right now, if you choose to go out and get this or get a digital copy, page 111. Page 111 in the physical copy starts a section that has, based on the DISC, D-I-S-C, words that each style, so to speak, I'll call it behavioral style, uses, and what they want to hear, and what they'll resonate with. So my message is no different about how to care for an animal. Take the same baby and put it with somebody who is described as a high D. I'm not going to change my message, but I would deliver that message differently than I would to somebody who's described as a high C, or high S, or high I. And this shortcuts and tells me how. And then the rest of the book, and to be honest, if you can, there's a company called Referral Institute. Don Lyons and Ivan Meisner, the two of the three co-authors, are a part of an organization called Referral Institute. If you have one of those near you and you can take the class, there's two options, a full day and a half day. For this particular thing, you can get referred into a half day for about $50. So it's a 4 or 6 hour thing. I'd have to look. But the class gives you the live experience, and it is invaluable. And like I said, the point is not to know what you are. I've done a million assessments. Again, tens of thousands of dollars on personal development, business development, blah, blah, blah. This is about how to talk to the person in front of me, how to honor them by relating to them in a way that they get. Now, if you go more in depth on this stuff, that's where mirroring comes from, that's where that stuff comes from. Trust me, this book is huge. Just think for a minute. I'll tell you the first place that I used it that it makes me say this so strongly. Imagine that you have a dying animal in front of you, and there's somebody there that is upset. And if they're a task-based person as opposed to a people person, and if they're fast-paced as compared to somebody who takes longer to process information, fast-paced, task person, they would like me to love on them and care for them and deliver the information about what's happening, what's going to happen, differently than somebody who is absolutely a people person and really needs a lot more information and a lot more time to make their decisions. And if we're talking about euthanasia or not, if we're talking about getting through the night without rushing to the emergency clinic, what a gift is it to talk to them in a language that they can hear you. Because I guarantee you, you have good information for them, even if it's not on the medical stuff, whether it's your chaplaincy or the massage work you do. If you want to be credible, you want to be trusted, speak to people in the way that they can best hear you, and no matter what your message, your expertise will come forward, because it'll be less about you two people relating. You know, there's tricks about mirroring and stuff like that. Ignore it all, go straight to that book, page 111, read the rest of the book to learn how to tell who you're dealing with, or if you can, get to a class. So that's one of my favorite resources in that way. Building trust. So we talked a little bit about that based on that book. By talking to people in a way that they can relate, that's going to build a bit of trust. Resources. Again, I've read 5 books, so you can have one awesome one. Totally stole that from Brian Feeney in the Realtor World, because it's true. And why should you read all 5 books? So one of the books that comes top of mind for this is a book called Speed of Trust. It's written by Stephen Covey's son, who is also Stephen Covey. Steve Covey? I think he uses his middle initial. But Speed of Trust is the book. And this book is incredible for talking about how to build trust with somebody in an incremental way and how you can do that more rapidly. There is a timeline that has to happen, and there's things and activities that you can do that will increase your trust in a shorter period of time, and to be honest, decrease your trust in a period of time. This may seem totally unrelated, but a place where I also learned this was in BNI. If you're in business, you might know about Business Networking International, BNI. If not, feel free to ask me offline. I'll talk to you more about that. They were the first ones, that and the Referral Institute, that really taught me about being visible with somebody and then being credible with them and then going to the next level where you're really trusted. And if it's a business relationship, they call it profitability in their thing. It's a Referral Institute thing you can look up. But for me, when it's working with a client, it's that absolute trust. Going back to Stephen Covey's book, it's that highest level of trust and faith. I mean, we're dealing with death and dying. It's important. It matters. Also building in trust. There's a book called Do the Work. I've got this huge list of resources. I'm happy to share it over time, but in this amount of time, I wanted to pick things that really stand out and might not be obvious, because you can go through the business section of any store. You can go through the interpersonal relationship areas of any store, tinker around on your Kindle. So Do the Work it's a short little fast read, and it's old, and it sounds old, and it looks old. And I was surprised that it was so valuable. This might be my newest favorite book. I have a digital version right now. I literally sent away for a hard copy because I'm going to have every person on my team read it. I now have staff, for those of you who don't know, and I'm going to have every one of them read it because I think it's invaluable in the building trust thing. So the point of the book is about if you have trouble finishing a project. It's written from the perspective of creative types. This is creative. Science and the arts are totally tied together, so whatever you're doing, it's absolutely creative. We can talk more about that another day. Point. Do the work. So this book is written from that angle, but it does give some ways for you to not have to stretch your mind so much to see the relevancy. How many times have you heard that building trust, do what you say? There's a hip-hop song on it, there's a country song on it, there's a rock song on it. Do what you say you're going to do. It's huge. This book, for me, besides helping me get to completion on things that I drag my feet on, get past procrastination, push through roadblocks, barriers, mental resistance, my own insecurities, whatever it is, the other thing this book does by doing the work is you are absolutely instilling trust and confidence. Over the last year, I've had this amazing journey. I told you that coaching and having mentors is something that's been a huge thing for me. So I joined a mastermind group. I have not only the guy that leads the thing who I've empowered to be a coach for me. I allow him to have difficult conversations with me to help whip me into shape. In addition to that, I have this community of people that have given beyond what the little sales page would say on the mastermind group. Yeah, I pay to be a part of it. I pay a hefty fee. I pay more than I can afford, and I can't afford not to do it. I'm not trying to sell you in on the group. The point is that over the last year, having been a part of it, things like Do the Work have come into my life. These people have come into my life. And now, 1 year later, having been in this thing and doing this for a year, the feedback I've gotten, sometimes unsolicited, about how much more professional I seem, how much more credible I seem. Because on a one-on-one basis, forget what's on the web, forget whether or not my website is updated, forget all the crap, forget whether or not you like my logo, you don't like, forget all of that. On a one-on-one basis, if I say I'm going to do something, I'm doing it. I follow through. If I can't, I communicate that. If I need more time, I'm asking for it. So it's not that I'm perfect, by far. In fact, I've found more imperfections with more money I spend on personal development than ever. But doing the work has impacted my life in a way that other people can see. And I'm probably more proud of that than all how awesome I feel and how much of a better place I'm in. Because if you don't already know, if you're not in an awesome place, you cannot help people. You can't help their animals. This is energy work. No matter which piece, no matter what industry you're in, this work comes from our heart. You cannot lie to a cat. You cannot get a horse into a trailer that doesn't want to go there. We have to be clear and honest about the brutal reality of where we are today. And sometimes that means, I don't know how I'm going to pay my mortgage. I had to eat something different than I would choose to so I could feed my children the way I think they should be fed. Sometimes it means I can't afford to leave this job right now, but I really have this other passion. And whatever that means, that book, Do the Work, will help you show up better, which will help get you out of that. There's another book that I wasn't actually, it's not on my list that I intended to share, but it's called Quitter. I love this book. This author is John Acuff. I will be honest, I love him as a presenter. I had a hard time starting this book, just author style thing. This book, Quitter, is the tagline or the subtitle is bridging the gap between your day job and your dream job. And one of the things he talks about in the book Quitter is that in order to get to your dream job, you have to be awesome at where you are today. If you're checked out and you're not showing up and you're not really, if you're just calling it in, you're not there, you're not going to get that next opportunity. It's the whole dress for the job you want thing. You've got to be awesome in wherever you are Even if it's that you've already started and the phone's not ringing, you've got to be cool with that place. And I can help you from firsthand experience. I can't do the work for you, but I can help you with the resources that I've used to help fake it till you make it to get out of that space. And fake it till you make it is not a long-term strategy. It is a short-term to kickstart you. And one of the other things that I think is most important with this is learning to forgive yourself. You are going to make mistakes. You're going to spend money on a class that you're going to figure out was not where you should have spent your money. I would love for you to learn from me and shortcut that. You are going to do something if you support animal hospice where you wonder if you did that right. Ugh, I'm going to cry again. No, I'm not. Every time I work with a family, I learn something new. Every single time. I have witnessed literally hundreds of natural deaths. I have witnessed thousands of euthanasias, more if you count before I started this business. I have seen animals through so much quality of life challenges. I have watched people struggle with their religious beliefs and how they want to treat their animals. I've watched people hurt over what they could afford versus what they want to do. And every single time, I learn something new, even today. And what makes me cry, it makes me hurt around that, is that no matter what, I don't have what's needed for this situation. That realization of, if I had hindsight, I could help you. The reality is, I have to learn to forgive myself for not knowing. For the reality. I mean, this sounds so easy to just say, but when you're in that moment and you're in that space, these are not just words. You have to really feel forgiveness. The affirmation in the mirror is the fake it till you make it. Believing it is huge. And being able to accept that no matter what you've done so far, no matter what you learn, no matter what you do, we can learn the business stuff. We can do that. We can not make mistakes in that area. We can best prepare ourselves for all of this. And the real thing is, whether you're the veterinarian at the quote-unquote top of the food chain in this circumstance, whether you're a nurse who's executing and communicating, kind of coordinating care, whether you're a massage therapist who's one of many key players for this family, whoever you are going to learn something if you're open to it. And if you're doing this, you're probably open to it. People don't do this for the money. You're going to learn something that will help some other animal some other time. You're going to learn something about people that will help some other person some other time. And that has to be okay. And we have to do that. And that is also part of why a community is so exciting to me. A place where people who are doing this in the real world, whether it's one case a year or one case a month, and I'm sorry to use the term case, but I didn't think you'd understand me necessarily if I said family, because that's what we say. Because we literally integrate ourselves. We become those partners, so we call ourselves family members. Being able to share our experiences, we can escalate the learning curve. When I worked in the traditional veterinary practice, just to give an outside of hospice example, spay, neuter, dental, spay, neuter, dental. I wasn't learning a lot, except how to get really good at assisting in surgeries and doing dentals. I have a passion for dentistry, by the way. Not really relevant in geriatric care, but it sometimes comes up. Separate from that, it's all about the animal in front of me. And when I got into the emergency clinic, oh, I had some learning to do. Because you're either dead silent and you're washing off the shelves and facing the pills the right direction. And depending on the clinic you're in, you're either talking to the vet and BSing, or he's upstairs reading a book or sleeping because he knows that at any minute it's going to be madness. And the next thing you know, it's going to be a scene out of House, and you're trying to do crazy diagnostics on this thing that doesn't make sense. You can't talk to a regular veterinarian, but you have an animal in front of you, and you have to immediately be present and focus on that animal. So if we can all share and learn and partake in the experiences of each other, can you imagine how great it would be to be present with all of that in the back of our head? If we could do the learning in advance, do the sharing in advance, have that all in the back of our head so that when we have that baby in front of us, we can be ready to learn that new lesson right there that day, and meanwhile implement everything we've already learned. And every one of them is going to be different. I love the emergency clinic. It's probably, that piece of it is probably why I love doing this now. You know, besides being able to honor life rather than mourn it, being able to celebrate a relationship rather than dismiss it or distance from it. The piece, one of the pieces that is huge for me is absolutely that I'm learning every time. And it's not learning about me, it's learning so that I can help some other animal some other time, and maybe some other family, if not their animal directly. You never know. People have more than one dog or more than one cat in their lifetime. So you never know with what they do today, how that's going to affect the next animal that comes through their household. So maybe they euthanize earlier than I would have liked them to. That next animal might have a different journey because of their experience with me. I can't tell you. I've been in business long. It's only been 7 years, only 7 years. And it's been long enough that I have had kids grow up, kids who were, you know, obviously a little bit older, but they've grown up to the age where they have their own pets now, or in their house with their parents, they are now the ones empowered to be in charge of the medical decisions and choices for their animals. And I watched the kids where I met them on a euthanasia or a hospice case years ago, and now I'm seeing them treat an older animal, and the way the kids are, it is amazing. We can literally change the world. I think as a culture, compared to some other places in the world I've traveled, we're pretty awesome with how we treat our dogs and cats and pets. For the most part, there's some negativity and some nastiness in the world. But as a culture, we're pretty awesome with how we treat our animals. How cool is it to take it to a whole nother level and to open somebody's heart in a way that was never open before? Whether you're a social worker or a chaplain or on the medical side or whatever, being able to affect change generations down the road, because we all remember when our dog died. We all remember maybe even that first goldfish that got flushed, you know? The death side of this for me, I don't need to rehash the story, but my dad dropped dead at 51. He was the first experience I had with death. I didn't lose a fish, I didn't lose a dog, I didn't lose a rabbit, I lost a dad. And there were tools that I learned, in that dying process. Thank God for that dog who helped me. There are things that I learned in there that helped me with each grief afterwards. And of course that's speaking to the choir with y'all, but everyone doesn't know that stuff. So being able to help parents give their kids an experience that can change their lives and change how they treat their animals in the future, it's huge. Okay, so I just have a few more minutes here. I had a pen and paper based on what kind of came out of my notes. I came up with an idea. I literally didn't really plan this. There's got to be more than just this one. Like I said, I've already reached out to a couple people and seen, how do we share, how do we do this? So here's what I'm thinking. There is a link. I don't know how, maybe I'll try. I don't know how to make this thing show you a link, so I'm just going to say it very slowly. It is this link .me, M-E, /free gift. That will take you to a website that you can get a free copy of Into the Light. Besides giving that away, you should know that anytime I give that away, not a lot of people read it. They all say they want it, but it's hard to read, so not a lot of people actually take me up on this offer. But if you go download that, two things will happen. For one, every time somebody downloads that, I give it away for free. I make, Gail Pope, the author, I came up with a number a few years ago, so I make a donation to Brighthaven every time that's donated as basically my little fee for her allowing me to give the book away for free. So this link.me /free gift. Enter in the information to get the free copy of Into the Light. If you already have the free copy of Into the Light, but you'd like to have more conversations, have maybe an open dialogue. I haven't figured out between Google and Facebook, but I have a couple of pages on there that are private or maybe we can be invited in and have a bit of a group and have a conversation in that way. I know because people have asked me one-on-one to, rather than have this, if I would talk with them personally, I can't tell you how to grow your business. You know, I can point you to resources that can help you, but it's your job to do the work to grow a business. But I have, again, tens of thousands of dollars invested in making sure that, well, and keeping my doors open and my mortgage paid, to be honest, and doing work that fulfills me every day. I believe that we should love what we're doing. And if you are called to animal hospice, this is not a mass market thing. We are few, we are far between. It takes a certain kind of heart, a certain kind of love, and not everybody's naturally a business person. So how are we going to do this? I would love to, I'm happy to tell you all the mistakes I have ever made and lay them out on the table and let you benefit from knowing how not to do it. To share with you based on those hundreds and hundreds of hours of reading and taking classes and investing in myself, where were the pieces that mattered to me? So I can't grow your business for you, but I can tell you everything you need to know about how to tell if an animal is a good candidate for hospice care. When are they not a good candidate for hospice care? I can give enough medical information so that you can have intelligent conversations with a veterinarian if you're not an RVT or otherwise medical professional. So if you're not a veterinary medical person, I can help you with enough information that you can communicate with the veterinarians in a language that they'll listen to you. I can tell you how to build trust among your clients, your vendors. If you're a not-for-profit, again, you do not count because they may not be clients that are paying, but taking up somebody's time is absolutely invaluable and it matters. And I can help you with that piece. Biggest thing I did was have a coach or a mentor. Maybe I can be a mentor for people. Maybe I can be somebody that you tap into. So I think from throwing this kind of together, let's use this link.me/free gift as a way for you to raise your hand. So like I said, even if you have Into the Light, use that to raise your hand to me and say, hey, I want to hear more about what you're doing as you're doing it. I don't know what it's going to look like when it's done, but we can at least get you tagged as, hey, I'm interested in this stuff. So that way I'll have your email address. I'll see who downloads the thing today. I'll be able to make that donation to Bright Haven. That always makes me happy. And like I said, a lot of people don't read that book. You should read that book. It's huge. And we can go from there and kind of see what we need. As you get the deliverable that is the download, you're going to have my email address. I am happy to hear from you which piece you want me to go more in depth on, what other questions you have. If you aren't one of the 25 and you have a burning question, let me know. And I'll work on some kind of schedule and who needs to come in and when and what and how we can make this a real mind share thing, how we can have a continual dialogue. The one thing that I see about this that I'm not thrilled with is it isn't a back and forth. I can see that that has its place and its benefit, but I would love to be able to do some back and forth, some round tables, some real masterminding to make sure that, yeah, I've been doing this 7 years and I've pretty much got it down. I've got a good, successful business. Most of my referrals come from veterinarians. All of my business comes by referral, whether it's clients or veterinarians. And we absolutely do, I think, an outstanding job. It sounds horrible to say that for yourself, but it's true. I definitely feel good about what I've created over time, and I do not feel good about some of the things I did to get here. So I'd love to make sure that even moving forward, if I can benefit from somebody else's story, we can keep this thing in a circular motion, start a conversation. So the link, again, because I know links are hard when you're not typing them out or whatever, is this link.me/free gift. Sorry, I'm reading right over there. So that's what I have for you today. I am going to go straight into my email. We got a few more extra minutes, so maybe I'll go straight into my email right now instead of wasting those couple minutes talking or whatever. And I'm going to look for those people who have hit the download button, and I've got pen and paper right here, and I will get started on how we can keep this conversation going, where it goes from here, and make sure that we're addressing the points. I've got to tell you, when I asked you guys these questions, and I said, what are the two, like, your top questions right now? I need the answers to these things. I thought I knew what you were going to ask me. I thought I knew what it was around animal hospice that people needed to know. And what you guys asked is really good questions, and it's questions I didn't ask in the beginning. And it's questions that can go so much deeper. And I think we need to keep talking. We got to keep this conversation going. So I'm going to work on how this can look. Raise your hand by saying you want to be involved in that conversation. Again, the link is this, as in this, not that, this link.me/free gift. Have a great day, guys. Thank you. I hope the technology worked the way it was supposed to. Bye-bye.